All right, let's keep going with this JavaScript game. Now, what I like to do, similar to what we do with CSS, is let's move this to its own file. Well, first of all, let me do what I've normally done in between the videos, and we're going to copy lesson 4 and just call it lesson 5. And there we go, and we'll close these so we don't work in them anymore. And we'll go to lesson 5. And inside here, we're going to make a new file. And we're just going to call it, I'm going to call it app.js. You can call it script.js, whatever you want. So just JS, obviously, for JavaScript. And let's take all of our code, not the script tags, but just the code itself. I'm in lesson 5, yeah. And we'll delete the script tags. And we'll put it right here. Now, in order to import this, just like our CSS, it's a little bit different. We do script source src, so kind of like an image tag. And we can just do app.js. And we should do type, even though this is kind of the default. I think it's just text/JavaScript. And now, if we go back to our browser, and of course change this to lesson 5 now, otherwise we'll still have the old one. It seems like it's not working. Oh, okay, so for this, we actually want to have closing script tags. There we go. For some reason, that one you can't self-close. I think it's because it's meant to have stuff in it. Like normally you do a script tag without a source like we did before and have stuff. But anyways, closing script tag. And there's various places you could put this. Having it at the top means it will sort of preload before this stuff does, which we kind of want in this case. But sometimes at the bottom for like certain use cases, you might want it. Anyways, doesn't really matter for our purposes. But now we have this nice way to work, which is good. Let's split up these two guys and give ourselves a lot of room here. And let's actually sort of work with, the DOM. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is show a common gotcha. So let's actually have, let's have a button. And we're going to give it an ID of my button, just like that. Maybe I'll do my button, kind of like camel case. And we'll just say button. And right over here, let's just try writing some stuff here. So to work with the DOM in vanilla JavaScript, we can go document. So this is kind of like a magic word that the browser has access to that gives us our document. And we can do something called get element by ID. And we can actually pass in the ID. So this has an ID of my button, and we can do my button. And let's actually put that into a variable. We'll just call it my button so we can work with it in code. And let's console.log my button. And you'll see it's null. And it's not because I didn't save. It's because this script is actually running and executing before all this stuff loads. Now, we could put this after, and sometimes that would fix the problem. But the proper approach is we actually want to add an event listener to our window to say, when everything's ready, let's go. So we can go window.add event listener. I think it's on load, or just load, I think. Yep. I saw it complete in there. And then we pass the callback. You've seen these in Dart, sort of doing these sort of callback sort of functions and, after an asynchronous sort of action, if you're not using awaits. And let's actually put this code into here. We forgot one thing. We need our sort of like arrow thingy dingy, same as Dart. And now let's try and run this. And now we actually see we get the button. And it's cool. It prints out like, sort of like a friendly version of the button, which is, what the element looks like in the DOM. But it's not just printing that as text. It is actually, Chrome is kind of like connecting the dots between these things. So now we have our button. Now, this is kind of like an annoying way to do it because now we sort of have this, event listener sort of thing in our code. So I'll show you something I like to do in vanilla JavaScript. Maybe it'll be a little bit confusing. Maybe it won't. But I like to kind of like architect things a little bit better. And what we're going to do is we're going to make something called an app. Okay? And it's going to just be an object. And objects are cool because you can do whatever you want with it. And we can actually create, some properties on this. And let's have something called onLoad. And it's actually going to be a function that gets called. And what I'm going to do is, essentially run this code when the app loads. And then what we're actually going to do is take our app here and run the onLoad function. So this we can kind of just bury, at the bottom of our document, and now we have this sort of nice way to work. Now this is not, you don't have to do it this way. You could just have a function, but I really like kind of having this because then we can have like various other, functions like on resize and have another event listener for that. Various things we could do. Okay, it's cool. So let's do this, and it's still working. All right, so we're just gonna put our code in here. Just think of this as like in Flutter, like the init state kind of thing of your page is all gonna run in here. And JavaScript, again, it's flexible and stuff. We can keep the semicolons, we can ignore them mostly 99% of the time. It's all good, but I like to have them. And yeah, because it's so flexible, we can do things like this. Like you wouldn't necessarily want to do this in Dart. It wouldn't make sense. But here we can do that. And you might see other people, in the world breaking things down like this. This is kind of an old school way of doing it because now with like React and all the various Svelte and everything, like you don't even have to do this at all because it's just a totally different world. But I just think this is clean and nice and gets you kind of thinking of like objects. So our app is like I think it's like a class or like singleton that represents all of our stuff, and we can do stuff. Anyways, not too much more on that. I just needed a nice way to run this code. Okay, so let's take our button and actually do something. My button. And let's do an event listener on here. Add event listener. And we can add an on-click event listener. I think it's just click, actually. Yeah, click. And then the same kind of thing as we did before. And I'll make this. I still want to see the HTML, but this is kind of our focus right now. So on our click event, we want to do something. So let's just for now console.log the click. And this is just a nice practice. Sorry for those with headphones. I just hit my microphone. It was probably loud. So console log click. This is just a nice thing to do anytime you're adding new functionality, because you might write a whole bunch of code and be like, why is it not working? And you realize it was the first step. Like you wrote, click 1 here instead or something stupid. I've been there. So now if we click this, we see the click event happening. Yay! So we're kind of like subscribing to that event. And that's cool. But for sort of like architecting this a little bit better, because I like to architect things, let's actually have like a handle button click in our app. And it's going to also do a function. And basically here, this should be like this, because this is an object, property, value. And here, let's just do our, what we had there, or not alert, sorry. Console.log click. So I'm just moving it to sort of here, and then instead of calling my implementation here, we can actually just go app.handle button click. There we go. Click, 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 click. Beautiful. Cool. So obviously our click button should do something a little bit better than just saying click to the console. People, unless they open up the console, are going to be like, this website's broken. Smart people will open the console and be like, oh, it's working exactly as expected. It's clicking. But let's actually do something cool. So let's actually, in our app, have sort of like a bit of state, I guess. Let's just call it click count, and it is actually equal to 0. Okay. So now what we can do when we handle the button click is we can go click count plus equals 1, or we can do plus plus, that works too. But we'll just do plus equals 1. And then instead of console logging click, let's actually, we could do both. And what's cool about our, in print and Dart, it's just one parameter. You can actually pass multiple parameters into here. So we can actually do click count as a second parameter. So we have like, this is like telling us as a developer, like, what is, what are we doing here? And then this guy right here will be the value. So if we actually go here, and we have our, click count is not defined. And it's because we need to say, and that's just because of the way I've architected this. It's a, namespace. I'm basically like namespaced stuff, if that makes sense. Let's see if that works now. Click count is not defined. Oh, because I'm also need to print out that one. There we go. Click 1, click 2, click 3. Okay, now obviously we want the button to, say so, or, like the counter app. Let's actually have something for that. So let's have a, make this a bit bigger. Let's have just a H2 maybe, and let's put this inside our main. You clicked the button, and let's put a span tag here. Span times. We're not going to worry about the plural, at least not yet. Maybe we will. And in here, let's just give this an ID of click count, something like that. Okay, cool. So you might think, oh, I can just like, get the click count like this. And no, we can't. Vanilla JavaScript, not a chance. It's a lot more work. And then, I think going through this and understanding the pains will make you realize why things like React and other reactive, frameworks exist. Okay, so first of all, let's get our, we have my button. Let's also get something called my click count, just to, keep it the same. And this was just called, let's also call it my click count. just so there's no confusion. My click count, cool. And let's start my click count. It's going to start at 0. So we'll just have a 0 already in there, and we have the space already, and I don't know why I have a semicolon there. Let's get rid of that. Okay, so now we have my click count. However, these are only scoped within, this function here, which is nice for certain reasons, but we want to obviously have access. So let's actually have, my button here, and we can just make it null, and my click count also null. And then we'll just get rid of these consts here. So I'll just go like this. And oops, I should have changed it to app.myButton. There we have it. So we're saying my button, my click count, cool. And now what do we want to do? Well, app.clickCount. So this is the actual element, right? My click count. We could probably name this even better, like my click count element, something like that. Maybe we should. Element and my button element, just so it's really clear. Although I don't think we have another thing. So let's just change that, and we need to add it to this, and we need to make sure we're using app here. Again, just namespacing stuff. So let's just make sure we're working. So we're getting our click still, everything's good, but this isn't changing, right? So now what we need to do is actually take our my clip, whatever, app.my click count element, and we can go I think it's just dot value, no, dot inner HTML equals, and here we'll just grab our app.clickCount. Let's see if that works. I might have messed something up. I did. Okay, one sec. All right, it is actually of type text content. The property we want to change is text content here instead of inner HTML. And now you'll see it's actually updating. So that's cool. We're, reacting and everything like that. But it's not, it's not, this was like kind of tedious. Like think about it. We had a variable storing it. We increment the variable. It'd be really nice if like when this changed, that would just update. And that will be where we get to in this course by, using things like Svelte and React and everything. But we kind of have to think about it like we're listening for events, we're doing things, we're maybe updating our own like sort of in-state memory, but we still have to remember to update the DOM. And it works the other way too, if we wanted, text that users typing in to be put into our state, but also update somewhere else, we have to like still purposely update it. It's not, the DOM is not reactive where you can just attach, something to it without, some kind of additional library. So yeah, there we have that kind of stuff. Now what I want to do just to, because I realize in partway doing this, like maybe this like, although I think this is nice and hopefully this kind of like inspires, you that, I could write, in kind of a cool, namespace or architecture. We're going to rework this just as sort of an even more vanilla JavaScript version, just to kind of see it, I think, how you would normally see it in a code base. So we'll just do app2.js. So here I will still need my window.event listener. And maybe we just kind of have a function called run. And that's what we actually call, just to keep this a little bit separated. So this is what would actually be run when when the load happens. So here we would want to have a variable called, we could just make these. I'm going to take this code here, let's get a little more space. And we'll just make this a const of my button element. And let's also get this right here. This can also be a const because it's never going to change. There we go. And then we don't even need that console log. And then we would still do this, but instead of using app, we'd still just add this event listener. Add event listener. Cool. Now, actually, sorry, let me make a slight change. I feel like the average, code base would kind of be more like this equals null, but we'll make these we'll just make these vars. And in fact, if you're just setting it to null, you don't even need this. We can do this. We're going to keep this outside of the run because this would be, we wouldn't be able to access these things outside of the run function, which I'm going to want to do. So now we'll kind of make another function here, and this will just be called handle button click. And we can kind of do this. So I'm just doing it in the most basic, the most basic way. So we want to take our click count, which we need to have that too. Click count, we'll just set it to 0 to start. So we want to do click count, and in this case, let's do plus plus. Let's really shake it up here. We got our plus plus happening, and then we want to take our my click element dot text content equals click count. Okay, I think that covered everything except we have to call this function, obviously. Now, because we're just calling a function within here, similar to Dart, we can just actually pass reference to that function. So let's do it that way for this case. Sorry, I know it's probably hard to see. Copy that, and we'll paste this here. So we're just going to pass reference. So notice I'm not calling it. I'm just passing a reference to it, just like in Dart. And we will go, and what we need to do is in our here, we need to change this to app2.js just to sort of make sure we're using the right one. And let's see if stuff's still working. There it is. Our click counter is going up. It is a beautiful day to make a counter app. And of course, we could have another button for going down. Maybe that's a challenge for you in the homework. You could do something to, get a form and get someone's name, all that kind of good stuff. But I think that's pretty basic. And let me just walk through this really quick because we kind of did that in a sort of hasty way. So yeah, this is the more, just to compare the two, this is the more traditional way that you would write it. We just have a couple functions. We're calling the run function. We have these global variables. So these are global variables. If we had multiple JavaScript files, they would be able to access these. It doesn't matter. It's like right at the, right at the root. It's right on the window element. Like you'd be able to actually go window.myButtonElement, and that's where these are stored because they're global. So not the best, which is why I kind of like this approach. It has this thing called app, and we are just kind of like initializing it, and it's keeping all of its own stuff within it. But I know this, I realized in halfway writing it that this might be a little bit confusing, but do it the way you like. This works totally fine. And there's a million other ways. These are just the ways I used to write things, before, back when like Backbone, JS, and Marionette and stuff were a thing, before React and everything. This is kind of how I was doing stuff. And I think if you've used Vue, you'll see it's pretty simple. Like Vue kind of has the same kind of pattern. They do something like this. So I was onto something, I guess, back then. But I still do it like this when I'm in the rare time I'm making a vanilla JavaScript website, which, it comes up pretty often, actually, now that I think about it. Sometimes, a framework or library is just overkill, and you can just do this. Like, this is the best counter app I've ever made, by far, at least in vanilla JavaScript. Okay, so that's cool. We'll leave it there. And, if you got this far and you like this content, please, do the things I always ask you to do. Like it, subscribe it, write a comment, DM me, whatever. I just want to make sure, I'm doing something and spending my time in a good way to share, resources that I think will be helpful for Flutter devs who are looking to grow their career. Again, this is fun. We're going to go with the flow, but I think we might take a look at TypeScript next, because it's kind of like the evolution of JavaScript. It still becomes JavaScript when you compile it, but you'll start to see even more likeness to Dart because you start to have like types and type safety and all that kind of stuff. All right, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you in the next one.